Sundays had become Sam's favorite day of the week. It was a day when the world, at least in his neighborhood, felt quieter, more forgiving, more open to possibilities. He was in his mid-30s, settled in a tidy suburban home with his wife Carol and their beloved Labrador mix, named Baxter. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms plus a small spare room that had once been used as a home office before Sam's job got relocated to a corporate building. These days, the second bedroom was mostly where Carol stored old blankets, holiday decorations, and the dog's extra treats. On Sunday mornings, Carol would gather Baxter's leash and head out the front door, no matter the weather, ready to give the energetic dog a good, long walk through the local park. Sam would always linger by the living room window, sipping from a warm mug of coffee, waving at them as they disappeared around the corner. When they were out of sight, he'd set his coffee on the kitchen counter and make his way quietly toward that spare room. He had fashioned a small hiding spot in an old cardboard box labeled winter jackets, carefully tucked behind out-of-season clothes. Inside was a short, auburn-colored wig and a simple knee-length jersey dress made of soft gray fabric. The wig fit snugly. He'd trimmed it a few times himself to keep it looking neat. The dress wasn't flashy, no bold patterns or fancy embellishments. It was comfortable, and that was all Sam ever really wanted from it. The moment he slipped the dress over his head, he felt a calm wash over him. He knew there were expectations placed on him throughout the rest of the week, duties at work, expectations in his marriage, obligations with neighbors and friends. But here, in this quiet hour on Sunday morning, he could step into this different way of being, even if it was just for a short while. He would pause sometimes in front of the spare room mirror, adjusting the wig slightly, relishing the gentle drape of the jersey dress over his frame. Soon after, he would wander to the kitchen to finish that mug of coffee. He often let it cool too much in his anticipation to change into something more comfortable, and then carry it to the living room window. He would sit in the armchair that faced the street, open the local newspaper, and simply exist in that moment, clad in the gray dress, his short hair tucked away under the wig. It was a peaceful ritual. He had been doing this for over a year. At first, it was a once-in-a-while experiment, something he believed might reassure him that this comfort he felt was genuinely important, not just a passing fancy. But Sundays had become routine. The key was timing. Carol's walk with Baxter tended to last around an hour, sometimes a bit more if she decided to explore new routes. Sam always left himself enough leeway so that he could change back before she returned. If she ever questioned why he was always so busy tidying up the spare room, he had a ready line: just reorganizing things. She never gave it much thought. At least that was what Sam told himself. One gray morning in early spring, as the sky threatened rain but never quite followed through, Sam slipped into his Sunday morning routine. He watched Carol tug her hood over her hair while she tried to persuade Baxter to hurry up out the front door. Sam gave a small wave. Once he heard the front door latch, he wasted no time heading straight to the spare room. He gently pulled the cardboard box from its hiding place. Out came the wig, out came the dress. He slipped into the clothing, exhaling deeply. The soft fabric draped over him, allowing him to finally feel peaceful. He pulled on a pair of flats he had found at a thrift shop a few months ago, shoes that were just large enough to fit him snugly. Standing in front of the mirror, he tilted his head left and right, brushing a few stray strands of the wig behind his ears. He wasn't trying to fool anyone. He just wanted to enjoy the sensation of wearing something he rarely could wear in his everyday life. "Looks like it might rain after all," he muttered to himself as he took one quick glance out the window. The street was empty. Even the usual joggers seemed to have decided to skip the neighborhood that morning. He made his way to the kitchen, poured a second cup of coffee, and settled into the comfortable armchair near the window with a folded newspaper in his hand. The routine was always the same: scan a couple of headlines, then let his mind wander. He was aware that the clock was ticking, but he tried not to think too much about that. He tried to savor every second of this fleeting moment. In the hush of the house, he heard the distant hum of cars on the main road. His phone buzzed once, an alert from a messaging group at work. He glanced at it briefly, decided it could wait, then set it aside. Nothing was more important than these moments right now. "Not sure when the sun will come out," Sam said aloud. He found himself talking to the empty house as though he were chatting with a friend. "Maybe this afternoon. That'll be nice." He offered a small private grin, and his reflection in the glass of the window grinned back at him. He finished his coffee, carefully folded the newspaper, then stood up and headed toward the kitchen sink. There was always a tiny bit of guilt tugging at him, this sense that he was hiding something from Carol. But with every quiet Sunday, he felt something immeasurably valuable in dressing this way. It wasn't about grand gestures or public appearances. It was about a small piece of comfort and calm that he granted himself. He glanced at the clock on the microwave and noticed the time. He had maybe 15 minutes before Carol was likely to return. He retreated to the spare room, took one last look at himself in the mirror, and delicately removed the wig. He folded the dress and placed it carefully back into the cardboard box before returning the box to its hiding place. With quick, practiced efficiency, he combed his hair, changed back into the jeans and sweatshirt he had been wearing earlier, and made sure everything looked just as it had before Carol and Baxter left. When Carol returned a few minutes later, the house smelled faintly of fresh coffee, and Sam was at the kitchen table flipping through the newspaper's sports section. Carol set the dog leash on its hook by the door and dropped a damp jacket on the back of a chair. "Was it any good outside?" Sam asked, glancing up with a casual smile. "It was fine, though the air feels heavy," Carol replied, rubbing Baxter's ears. "I'm guessing it's going to pour sometime this afternoon. Did you see the weather forecast?" Sam shrugged. "They're predicting thunderstorms this evening, so maybe we'll have some rain on and off before that." Carol nodded, heading toward the fridge. "I'll make us a quick breakfast. French toast sound good?" "Sounds perfect," Sam said, folding the newspaper neatly. Baxter wandered over, sniffed at Sam's knee, and nuzzled his hand. Sam petted the dog's head gently, acknowledging the simple warmth of that moment. Everything in the house was back to normal, at least on the surface. That was the pattern for months: calm, reliable, predictable in its rhythms. Sam worked a desk job at a marketing company a few towns over, commuting by car each morning. Carol had her own work at a small law office, and while she was hardly a lawyer herself, she handled front desk duties, scheduling clients, and keeping the place from falling into chaos. They came home around the same time each evening, taking turns cooking dinner, feeding Baxter, and sometimes watching a show together on the couch before drifting off to bed. One Sunday, Sam came dangerously close to breaking his routine. The day had started just like every other, with Carol tugging on her sneakers and harnessing Baxter. But as she left, she said over her shoulder, "I might do a shorter walk today, just around the block. My knee's bothering me." She gave Sam a quick peck on the cheek and headed out. Sam hesitated a moment in the living room. Should he skip it this time? Should he forgo the wig and dress because the walk might be shorter? But he told himself that Carol had said short walk, which might still be half an hour. The urge to maintain his usual Sunday morning habit was strong. He hurried to the spare room and changed into the jersey dress, pulling on the wig even more quickly than usual. His heart hammered in his chest because he knew he had less time than normal. He went to the window and kept an anxious watch on the street. Instead of carrying his coffee to the living room, he kept it in the kitchen. He didn't dare risk missing the sight of Carol and Baxter rounding the corner. The entire experience was more tense than relaxing, but still, he felt that undeniable relief in the fabric of the dress, a reassurance he couldn't quite explain. Barely 20 minutes had passed when he spotted Carol turning the corner a block away, her pace slower than usual because of her knee. Sam's stomach flipped. He set his coffee mug down so abruptly that a bit of the liquid sloshed over the edge. He cursed under his breath, grabbed a dish towel, and quickly wiped up the spill before rushing to the spare room. He peeled off the dress, tucked the wig away, and stashed everything back in the box. He was zipping up his jeans when he heard the front door open. "Sam?" Carol's voice echoed through the house. "Are you here?" "Back here," he called, sounding slightly breathless. He stuffed the dish towel under his arm, then emerged from the spare room. "Everything all right?" Carol nodded but frowned when she saw his flushed face. "I'm fine, but are you okay? You're kind of red. Feeling hot?" "Yeah, I was just running around cleaning," he fibbed. "I spilled some coffee." "All right," she said, taking a seat in the nearest chair. "My knee's just acting up. I didn't want to push it today." Sam tried to steady his breathing. "Good call," he managed to say. "Better to rest than overdo it." Even though he was standing there in his usual clothes, the feeling of wearing the jersey dress still lingered like an echo in his mind. He was relieved he hadn't been caught, but the close call left his heart pounding with anxiety. From that day forward, Sam was more careful. If Carol hinted at having a busy day or feeling unwell, he kept his routine short, ready to revert to his everyday clothes at the faintest sign of her return. At work, Sam maintained a reserved demeanor. He had a small circle of colleagues he was friendly with, including Dave, a chatty guy who often joked about how Sam never seemed to open up much. One Friday, while they were both in the break room, Dave said, "Any big weekend plans, Sam? You heading out to the city? Or maybe taking Carol somewhere for dinner?" Sam smiled tightly and shook his head. "Nothing special. Probably just the usual chores and errands." "Ah, that's the suburban life," Dave teased with a good-natured laugh. "Sometimes I envy it. My apartment is so noisy. My neighbors throw parties every weekend, so I barely sleep. Maybe I should get a dog, find a nice neighborhood. Actually, that reminds me. Didn't you say you have a dog?" "Yeah, Baxter. He's a handful, but a great companion." Dave nodded. "There's something about having a pet that makes home feel cozier, right?" "Definitely," Sam agreed, trying not to let his mind wander too far into the details of his own weekend routine. He liked Dave well enough, but knew there was no chance he would ever confide his Sunday secret to him. That evening, Sam arrived home to find Carol flipping through a cookbook at the kitchen table. Baxter's tail thumped lazily on the floor as he lay at her feet. "Thinking of trying something new," Carol said, glancing up. "How does lemon chicken sound for Sunday dinner?" "Sounds delicious," Sam replied, setting his briefcase down. He listened to Carol list out ingredients she needed from the grocery store, nodding in agreement whenever she paused. He loved these small domestic moments, even though they often reminded him of the hidden part of himself that emerged only when she was out walking Baxter. He wondered if Carol would ever look at him the same way if she discovered what he did each Sunday morning. One Saturday afternoon, Carol ran out for errands. Sam, left alone, decided to use the time to recheck the hiding spot in the spare room. He had an inexplicable worry that something might be out of place, that Carol could stumble on the wig or the dress if she moved certain boxes. He carefully opened the cardboard box, letting out a small breath when he saw that everything looked just as he had left it. The wig was tucked in a zippered plastic case, the dress folded neatly. He gently lifted the dress, letting the soft jersey material slide through his fingers, trying to see if the box had shifted. Nothing appeared amiss, so he repacked it all. He stood up and caught his reflection in the mirror, noticing the slight worry lines on his forehead. "What are you doing?" he muttered to himself. "You're acting like you've done something wrong." He paused, realized the conversation he was having in his head, then forced a calm breath. He heard the car pull up out front and quickly replaced the lid of the box. By the time Carol walked through the door with groceries, he was standing in the hallway, ready to help her carry the bags into the kitchen. That evening, while putting away groceries, Carol remarked offhandedly, "We should clean out that spare room soon. It's getting cluttered. I have no idea what's in half of those boxes." Sam's heart lurched. "Most of it's old clothes and decorations," he said, careful to keep his tone light. "We can definitely sort through them at some point." Carol chuckled. "I'm a little scared of what I might find in there." Sam faked a laugh in return. "Probably just dust bunnies." He tried not to let worry gnaw at him, but his mind raced. He had to stay vigilant. If she insisted on rummaging through every corner of that spare room, he'd have to move his things elsewhere. But where? He considered stashing them in the garage or attic, but neither spot felt secure. He decided he would wait and see if she brought it up again. After all, sometimes Carol mentioned projects that never materialized. Life got in the way, or something more urgent came up. He could only hope that would be the case this time. The next morning was Sunday. True to routine, Carol grabbed Baxter's leash and headed out, planning on doing a full circuit around the park. She gave Sam a wave, and he returned it, the familiar swirl of anticipation bubbling up inside. After the front door clicked shut, he strode to the spare room. The tension from the previous night's conversation still lingered, but that did not stop him from carefully taking out the wig and dress. He put them on, letting the routine chase away his anxieties for a while. He sat in the living room, coffee in hand, reading headlines about local politics and construction projects. He noticed a neighbor across the street, Mr. Hernandez, stepping out onto his porch. Sam felt a brief moment of alarm. Was he visible through the window? But Mr. Hernandez seemed more interested in checking his mail. The older gentleman ambled back inside without so much as a glance. Sam's shoulders relaxed. He finished reading a feature on the city's upcoming events, then checked the time. It was almost exactly 40 minutes since Carol had left. He decided he had maybe 10 minutes left before he should change back. He lifted the coffee cup to his lips, savoring the quiet, that sense of calm that this short Sunday tradition gave him. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The shock made him nearly drop the mug. Coffee splashed onto the floor. His immediate thought was Carol had forgotten her key and come back early, but he heard voices outside, multiple voices. Peering through the window, he spotted two neighbors with a clipboard. They seemed to be raising funds for a park beautification project. Sam's heart pounded. He tiptoed from the living room to the hallway, the dress swishing around his legs. The doorbell rang again. "Sam?" he heard a muffled voice call. They knew he was home. His car was parked in the driveway. He panicked, considering if he should open the door in a partially hidden position or just ignore it and pretend he was out. But ignoring them would raise suspicions. These were neighbors, after all, people who might bring it up with Carol later. Hastily, he slipped off the flats, scrambled into the spare room, and yanked the dress over his head. The wig tangled slightly, pulling on a few strands of his hair. He cursed under his breath, tossed them both onto the bed, and fumbled for his jeans and t-shirt. The doorbell rang a third time, followed by a knock. "Coming!" he shouted, voice cracking with tension. He rushed to the front door, pulling it open with a forced smile. The neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Becker, gave him a concerned look. Mrs. Becker had her eyebrows raised slightly, as though suspecting something was amiss. "Hey, folks," Sam said quickly. "Sorry, I was, in the middle of something." "It's all right," Mr. Becker said, adjusting his grip on the clipboard. "We're collecting donations for new benches at the park. We know you and Carol are regulars there with Baxter. Figured you might be interested in chipping in." "Oh, sure," Sam said, trying to sound perfectly normal. Carol's not here right now, but I can donate a bit. He stepped onto the porch, pulling the door half shut behind him. He didn't want them peeking into the house. His pulse was still racing, but he did his best to hide it. He wrote a check for a modest amount and handed it over. They thanked him, then moved along down the street. Sam closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a long, shaky exhale. Sweat slicked his palms. That was too close. A scenario like this had never happened before, and it rattled him. He'd spent so long assuming that no one would bother him on Sunday mornings, but clearly that assumption wasn't safe. He realized he was still trembling a bit. Rushing back to the spare room, he grabbed the dress and wig and stuffed them into the cardboard box. He decided not to linger on the routine any longer that day. Too many close calls in too short a time. He needed to remain calm, act natural when Carol returned. He cleaned the spilled coffee, changed into a fresh t-shirt, and splashed cold water on his face in the bathroom sink. Within 20 minutes, Carol and Baxter were back. She announced they had run into some friends at the park and they'd arranged to meet them for brunch. Sam forced a genial smile, feeling jittery beneath the surface. "We're meeting them in an hour," Carol said, standing in the hallway as she slipped off her jacket. "Is that okay?" "Sure," Sam managed. "Sounds good. Let me just shower quickly, and we can go." While the water ran in the shower, Sam tried to settle his nerves. The tension knotted in his stomach like a persistent ache. He sensed that his routine was getting riskier. Yet he also knew it wasn't something he could simply stop. It had become too important, like an emotional refuge, however brief it might be. But the mounting stress worried him. Could he keep balancing the life he had with the desire he felt for these quiet moments? A few weeks later, Dave from work invited Sam and Carol to a barbecue in his backyard. It was a casual gathering with co-workers and their families. Sam felt obligated to go, partly to maintain a friendly rapport, and partly because it might help keep attention off any secretive behavior. On that sunny Saturday afternoon, Sam and Carol arrived at Dave's place, carrying a dish of pasta salad. They were greeted by the smell of grilled burgers, the sound of children playing tag, and the hum of small talk scattered across the yard. Carol soon struck up a conversation with Dave's wife, Sarah, while Sam was cornered by Dave, who insisted on introducing him to everyone in attendance. "So this is the man himself," Dave announced to a circle of colleagues, patting Sam on the shoulder. "Hard worker, quiet guy, but top-notch at marketing reports." Sam gave a modest grin. "I just do my best." In the swirl of chatter and sizzling grill sounds, Sam felt oddly out of place. He exchanged polite conversation about the company, the local sports teams, and weekend routines. Someone asked him what he did to relax on Sundays. Sam hesitated for half a second before replying that he mostly stayed home, read the newspaper, walked the dog with Carol sometimes. He tried to be vague, and no one seemed overly interested in pressing him. At one point, Carol drifted to his side, balancing a plate of food. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "You look a bit tired." "Just not used to crowds," he replied. "I'm fine, though." They ended up leaving a bit early, with Sam offering an excuse about needing to prepare for a busy Monday. In the car, Carol teased him gently about being antisocial. "I know big gatherings aren't your thing," she said, a laugh in her voice. "But Dave's nice, right?" "Yeah, Dave's a good guy," Sam replied. "I'm just not used to being around so many people from work outside of the office, you know?" "Sure," Carol said, focusing her gaze on the road. "It's a different vibe." He gazed at her for a moment, thinking how easy it was for her to mix with other people, how she never seemed to carry secrets around. He felt a pang of envy, though he tried to bury it. He didn't want to put any distance between them, but it was hard when part of him was hidden away. The following Sunday was bright and breezy. Carol took Baxter out as usual, heading for a longer walk since her knee had improved. Sam hoped the air of normalcy would help him relax, but he was still jumpy. He grabbed the wig and dress, slipped into them, and sat in the living room with the newspaper, trying to sink into the same tranquility he usually found. He made it about half an hour, then restless energy forced him up. He walked to the front door and locked it, something he usually forgot to do on Sunday mornings. No need in their quiet neighborhood. But the unexpected visit from the neighbors last time had shaken him. He then paced into the spare room, glancing out of that window at the side yard. It was quiet, sunbeams filtering through the leaves of the oak tree. Feeling a sudden wave of boldness, he stepped out into the hallway, turned the corner, and entered the kitchen. Without second-guessing, he pulled open a drawer to grab a notepad and pen. He wanted to jot down some grocery items, and somehow, in that moment, the sunlight catching on the soft gray fabric of his dress, it all felt strangely right. He was so lost in thought that he jolted when he heard the doorknob rattle. Carol was back early. The dog leash clinked against the door as she jiggled it, clearly fumbling for her key. Sam froze. His eyes darted to the clock. Only 40 minutes had passed. She must have decided not to go around the park as many times as usual. He had no time. The nearest place to hide was behind the kitchen door, which was slightly ajar, but that made no sense. She'd see him the moment she stepped in. Heart pounding wildly, Sam took off in the direction of the spare room. He scrambled inside, shutting the door behind him without slamming it, then lunged for his regular clothes. He tugged the dress off, not caring if it wrinkled, and yanked the wig free. He shoved them both behind the bed and frantically threw on his t-shirt and jeans. He heard Carol's voice drifting down the hallway. "Sam? Where are you?" she called, sounding puzzled. He crouched, took 2 seconds to cram the wig and dress into the cardboard box, and then pressed the box into the corner. He prayed Carol wouldn't come looking for him in here. Sliding out of the room, he made a show of adjusting his shirt so it would look like he was tidying up or rummaging for something. Carol appeared at the end of the hall with Baxter, who trotted over to Sam, tail wagging. "We cut our walk short," she explained. "It got a bit too windy. I felt a few drops of rain, so I didn't want to go all the way around the park." He gave a shaky laugh, scratching Baxter's head. "I heard the door and rushed to see what was going on." Carol frowned slightly, eyes flicking to the spare room. "You were in the spare room?" "Yeah," Sam said, clearing his throat. "Just checking a few boxes. Thought maybe we could start organizing soon, you know." She arched an eyebrow. "Is this a change of heart? Last time you didn't seem too eager." He tried to shrug casually, ignoring the hammering in his chest. "I just figured it was a good day to poke around. But I didn't really get started. I heard you come in, so I wanted to say hi." Carol nodded, letting the matter drop for the moment. "Maybe we can do it together next weekend." "Sure, next weekend." He forced a small smile, hoping the wave of panic he felt wasn't too obvious on his face. Over the next few days, Sam found it hard to concentrate. The close calls were piling up. He considered hiding the dress and wig in a completely different location, maybe renting a small locker in a storage facility. But that seemed complicated and suspicious if Carol ever asked why he had a storage unit. He also wrestled with a quiet fear. Was Carol growing suspicious of him? She hadn't said anything outright, but there had been moments. Her frown, her questions, her random remarks about cleaning out the spare room. He wanted to dismiss it as normal curiosity, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her awareness. One evening after dinner, Carol said out of the blue, "You know, I noticed a weird smell in the spare room last time I was in there. Might be mildew or something." Sam's stomach tightened. "Oh, really? I haven't noticed." "I think we should do a full clean," she said, sounding more convinced now. "What if there's a leak somewhere? If we don't catch it early, it could damage the walls or floor." He nodded, wishing he could come up with a valid reason to delay. "Sure," he said, trying to sound cooperative. "We can check it out on Saturday." She stood up from the couch and carried the dinner plates to the sink. "I'll try to pull out those boxes I can move on my own, and we'll see if we need to rent a carpet cleaner or something." Sam quietly followed her into the kitchen, his heart heavy. He had no plan yet. If he left everything in that box, she was bound to find it. He felt cornered. But Saturday was only a few days away, leaving him little time to make new arrangements. If he acted too hastily, she might notice something was missing or wonder what he was hiding. He spent a restless night, tossing and turning, his mind conjuring scenarios in which Carol opened the cardboard box, discovered the wig and dress, and confronted him, outraged or hurt. By morning, he was exhausted. Determined to protect his small slice of comfort, Sam took an early day off from work on Friday. He told Carol he was swamped with tasks and likely wouldn't be home until late, so she shouldn't wait up. She gave him a sympathetic look and said, "Okay, be safe driving home." Instead, once he left the house, he headed to a small strip mall on the opposite side of town. The night before, he had researched local places that sold used clothing, not wanting to attract attention by walking into a mainstream store and risking running into acquaintances. He found a half-empty parking lot in front of an unassuming thrift shop. Inside, the store was cluttered, but Sam felt anonymous enough. He walked through racks of clothes and grabbed a cheap duffel bag. He also found an old jacket that was a few sizes too big, something he thought he could place around the wig to hide it further if needed. He paid in cash, keeping his head down. Next, he drove to a commercial storage facility on the outskirts of town. He had researched this too. He told the woman at the front desk that he needed a small locker for some personal items. She gave him forms to fill out, and he signed a rental agreement for 1 month, also paying in cash. He left with a key and a unit number. He felt uneasy about the secrecy, but it was the only way he could think of to protect his Sunday morning ritual. Returning to the house, he parked 2 blocks away so the car wouldn't be seen. Then, using the key Carol never knew he kept, he slipped inside just after noon. The house was empty. Carol wouldn't be back for hours. He rushed to the spare room, pulled out the cardboard box, carefully placed the wig and dress in the new duffel bag, then slid the old jacket over them for good measure. After scanning the rest of the box to make sure nothing incriminating remained, he sealed it up. He left a few random winter items in there so it looked legitimate if Carol opened it. Soon he was back in the car, heading to the storage unit. He found the small metal door, unlocked it, and placed the duffel bag in the far corner. The space was dim and smelled faintly of dust. He draped the jacket over the bag. Locking the door with a padlock, he tested it twice to ensure it was secure. A part of him felt sadness. Another part felt relief. Now at least there was no chance Carol would stumble across his things at home. That evening, he went through the motions of coming home late. He even wore a slightly rumpled dress shirt, so it would look like he had been at work a long time. Carol was in the living room, reading a magazine. "Long day?" she asked sympathetically. "Yeah," he replied, flopping onto the couch. "It's good to be home." "I'm about to head to bed," Carol said, yawning. "We can tackle that spare room tomorrow, all right?" He forced a nod. "Sure. Let's see what we're dealing with in there." Saturday morning arrived, and true to her word, Carol donned a pair of old sweatpants and a t-shirt, tied her hair back, and grabbed a box cutter. Sam joined her, hoping the newly emptied cardboard box would pass inspection. They pulled out dusty holiday decorations, threadbare winter coats from years ago, and random knickknacks from Carol's college days. Carol coughed once or twice as they stirred up dust. Sam did his best to keep his expression neutral, lifting each item out of the box to show her. Eventually, they reached the box that used to hide the wig and dress. Sam's pulse quickened as Carol knelt beside it. She slit the tape with the box cutter, flaps popping open. Inside, she saw only a couple of old sweaters, a scarf, an out-of-season coat, and a ratty blanket. She rummaged through them, frowned, then shrugged. "Just more clothes," she said, sounding uninterested. She set the box aside without a second glance. Sam let out a slow breath of relief. They continued sorting. By late morning, they had a small pile of items to donate and an even larger stack of trash bags filled with things to throw away. Carol wiped sweat from her brow. "I don't think there's a leak," she said. "No sign of water damage on the floor or walls." "Might have just been an old musty smell," Sam ventured. "Yeah, probably. We should open a window in here once in a while, air it out." They finished up around noon, and Carol stretched her arms. "We did a good job. Looks better already." "It does," Sam agreed, forcing a relaxed smile. The tension in his gut finally eased. "Thanks for helping," Carol said, smiling back. "I know it's not exactly thrilling, but it's nice to do it together." He nodded, feeling an odd pang. They were a team, as they had been for so long, yet part of him was hidden away, locked in a storage unit across town. The next day was Sunday, and Carol took Baxter for his usual walk. Sam sat on the couch, feeling oddly empty. He couldn't just sneak off to the spare room and slip into his comfortable clothes. Those clothes were no longer within reach. They were in a cramped locker behind a padlocked door, a short drive away. Eventually, he got into his car, telling himself that he just wanted to go for a quick spin to clear his head. He found himself driving out to the storage facility. Once there, he parked in a distant corner of the lot, checked that no one was watching, and walked quickly to his unit. Inside, he flipped on the overhead light, gazing at the duffel bag in the corner. He knelt, unzipped it, and gingerly took out the wig and dress. He was alone, the metal walls echoing faintly with his breathing. It wasn't the same as the spare room in his house, but it was private enough. He slipped the dress on over his jeans and t-shirt, then realized that felt all wrong, so he peeled off the t-shirt and jeans, leaving himself in just the dress. He smoothed out the wrinkles as best he could. He placed the wig on, fluffing it gently. With no mirror, he couldn't fully see himself, but he caught his reflection in the metal surface of the locker's door, a blurry shape. It would have to do. He stood there for a long moment, his pulse gradually slowing. Even here, in the harsh light of a storage unit, the soft fabric offered the same comforting effect. There was something about that feeling he couldn't put into words, something he wasn't willing to abandon. He glanced at his phone, only about 15 minutes until Carol would likely return home. Quickly, he changed out of the dress, folded it, and placed it in the duffel bag. He removed the wig, zipping it back into its protective case. Then, with a final look around, he locked the door and left, driving home carefully. By the time he walked through the front door, Carol and Baxter were back. She called from the kitchen. "Hey, everything all right?" "Yeah," Sam replied casually. "Just took a little drive. Thought I'd pick up some milk." He held up the small grocery bag as proof. "Great. I was wondering if we were running low." He set the bag on the counter, feeling the leftover adrenaline humming through his body. Each Sunday was becoming more complicated, yet he couldn't bring himself to let go of that private ritual. Even if it meant sneaking off to a storage locker, even if it meant living with a constant background hum of worry. In the weeks that followed, Sam developed a new pattern. He would tell Carol he was doing quick errands on Sunday mornings. Sometimes he said he was headed to the hardware store for yard supplies. Other times he claimed he needed to go to the office for an hour to catch up on projects. She never questioned him too deeply. She often assumed he was just seizing the chance to handle tasks he normally left until the last minute. He'd drive to the storage unit, unlock the door, slip into the dress and wig, and stand there in that cramped metal space, occasionally checking his phone for the time. He even brought a small portable stool so he could sit down comfortably, trying to recreate the sense of calm he used to have at home. It was far from ideal. The overhead light was glaring, there was no soft living room chair, and the faint, musty odor lingered. But it was better than nothing. Sometimes he imagined a day when he might not need to hide. But that thought brought a mix of emotions. Every scenario ended in him feeling uncertain about what Carol would say, how she'd respond if she saw him this way. Though they had a strong marriage, this was a secret that felt too large to risk revealing. He was growing more tired of lying, though. One Sunday, Dave unexpectedly called, asking for help moving some furniture. Sam had been on his way to the storage unit but changed course. As he hefted a heavy couch into Dave's truck, he realized that part of his frustration and exhaustion came not just from a busy life, but from the constant balancing act of guarding his secret. That afternoon, he tried to shake off the irritation. He told Carol he needed to lie down for a bit, blaming a sore back from moving furniture. She laid a cool towel on his forehead, not suspecting that his real discomfort went far deeper. One Saturday morning, a couple of months after Sam had moved his clothes to the storage locker, Carol announced, "I got a coupon for that storage facility on Route 9. They're offering the first month free. Wouldn't it be great to move some of our winter stuff out of the spare room and into a storage unit? Then we'd have more space at home." Sam's heart nearly stopped. Route 9 was exactly where he had his locker. "That's interesting," he said, forcing neutrality into his voice. "But do we really want to pay monthly for something we can store in our attic or the garage?" Carol shrugged. "The attic and garage are pretty full already. This coupon might be a good deal, at least for a few months. I'd like to clear out some room in the closet for my summer dresses. Our closet is jam-packed." Sam struggled to keep panic at bay. "We can check it out," he said carefully, not wanting to sound too opposed. "But maybe I can reorganize the garage a bit first. We might not need to pay for storage if I can make some extra space." Carol gave him a thoughtful look. "Sure, if you're up for it. But if it's too much trouble, we can just use the coupon." He nodded, feeling sweat on his palms. If Carol ended up renting a unit at the same facility, there was a risk she'd discover his name on the rental agreement, or see him there unexpectedly, or find the second unit under his name. He didn't know how large the place was, or how easy it would be to hide his presence. The potential for disaster loomed. Desperate to avoid that scenario, Sam took the next week off work under the pretense of a staycation. He told Carol he would clear the entire garage, build new shelves, and figure out a more efficient organization system. The first morning of his time off, he tackled the project with a fervor he hadn't shown in years. He hauled out old tools, discarded broken junk, and stacked holiday decorations neatly. By the time Carol got home from her job that evening, Sam was covered in sweat and dust, but the garage looked transformed. Shelves lined the walls, labeled boxes were neatly stacked, and he had cleared a wide space in the center. "Wow," Carol said, eyes wide with admiration. "This is amazing. I can't believe how much you got done." He forced a grin. "Figured if we could store half the stuff that's been cluttering our closets out here, we wouldn't need an actual storage unit." "Absolutely," Carol said, letting out a sigh of relief. "I guess we can skip that idea then. You really saved us some money. Thank you." He nodded, relieved beyond words. Happy to help. Though he was physically exhausted, Sam felt triumphant. He had effectively derailed the possibility of Carol renting a unit at the same facility. His secret would remain locked away in that unmarked steel locker. But as Sunday approached, he realized he'd have to keep lying. He told Carol he needed to buy wood stain for the newly built shelves, then slipped away to the storage unit for his private hour. He repeated the routine. Unlock, step inside, pull out the dress and wig. The stark environment still felt jarring, and he couldn't shake the sense that he was paying a steep emotional price for these fragments of relaxation. One balmy Sunday morning, just as Sam was closing the lock on his storage unit, he almost ran into someone coming around the corner of the corridor. It was a middle-aged woman with short brown hair, presumably visiting her own storage space. She gave him a polite nod, and Sam nodded back, trying to hide the fact that he was clutching a duffel bag. The woman glanced down at the bag, then at Sam's face. "Morning," she said cheerfully. "Hot one out there." "Sure is," he replied, stepping aside so she could pass. He kept his head lowered slightly. She unlocked her own unit a few doors down, and Sam quickly walked away, heart pounding. If she mentioned seeing him to a facility employee, or if they had cameras, or if she recognized him from somewhere in town, the situation could spiral. He knew that was unlikely, but each risk, however small, weighed heavily on him. Slipping into his car, he forced himself to breathe normally. He wasn't doing anything illegal. He had every right to rent a locker and store personal belongings there. Still, everything about this double life made him tense. He drove home, following the usual pattern, and found Carol whistling in the kitchen, preparing lunch. The normalcy of it was both a comfort and a cause of guilt. She deserved honesty, but the fear of how she might react was enough to keep him silent. Despite all the close calls and the mounting lies, Sam continued with his routine. He found ways to slip away under various excuses, always returning the wig and dress to the storage unit, always careful not to raise suspicion. Over time, the routine felt lonelier, but it was still better than not having it at all. One sunny Sunday, everything changed. Sam was driving back from his usual visit to the storage unit when he decided to swing by the grocery store for a legitimate errand. He grabbed some milk, bread, and fruit, then headed home. Pulling into the driveway, he noticed Carol's car was missing. He wondered if she had gone out for an unexpected errand, too. He walked in, put the groceries away, and called out for Carol. No answer. Shrugging, he figured she might have taken Baxter for a second walk or visited a neighbor. He was about to flip on the TV for a sports highlight when his phone buzzed. The text was from Carol. "Hey, I'm walking Baxter. Looks like a big storm is rolling in, but we're fine. Be home soon." Sam texted back a quick, "Okay, see you soon." Then he realized with a flash of dread that if a storm was coming, Carol might have turned around faster than usual, possibly meaning an early return. He didn't have anything incriminating at home now that the dress and wig were locked away, yet his nerves spiked anyway, the same old habit of feeling on edge whenever he suspected a sudden arrival. Sure enough, thunder rumbled in the distance, and the sky darkened. Within minutes, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Suddenly, the front door burst open, and Carol stumbled inside, soaked to the skin, Baxter shaking water everywhere. "It came down fast," she said, breathless. Sam rushed to help her dry off, grabbing towels from the linen closet. "Are you okay?" She nodded, cheeks flushed from running through the rain. "We're fine, just drenched." She patted Baxter, who was wagging his tail vigorously. As they toweled off, lightning flashed outside, and the sky cracked with thunder. The electricity flickered, then steadied. They spent the next half hour mopping up the water that Baxter trailed through the hallway. Carol eventually laughed at the absurdity of it. "I guess that's a Sunday adventure," she said, looking out at the storm through the window. "At least we made it home before it got worse." Sam mustered a small laugh in return. The tension in his chest loosened a fraction. He thought about how remarkable it was that their home life carried on, even while he maintained this private corner of his world. As months passed, Sam's routine continued much the same. He changed strategies if Carol's schedule altered. He adjusted the time he went to the storage unit if needed. Sometimes, life got in the way, and he missed a Sunday. When that happened, he felt uneasy, as though he was missing a piece of his week. But as soon as he had another chance, he'd slip away again, resuming the pattern. He and Carol had their usual talks about finances, house upkeep, weekend plans. On the surface, life moved forward in gentle, ordinary rhythms. Carol never brought up any suspicion about the day Sam spent reorganizing the garage or the quick errands he made on Sundays. If she was curious, she didn't press him. One morning, she offhandedly mentioned a dream she had, saying, "I dreamt I opened a closet and found all these clothes I didn't recognize. Weird, right?" Sam's heart nearly skipped a beat, but he forced a light chuckle. "Dreams can be strange." She shrugged, sipping her coffee. "Yeah, dreams never make much sense to me anyway. I don't even remember most of it." He nodded, hoping the heat rising in his cheeks wasn't visible. One Sunday in early autumn, Sam slipped on his usual jeans and t-shirt, telling Carol he was running an errand. His plan was the same: go to the storage unit, spend an hour wearing the dress, maybe read a few articles he had downloaded on his phone, then return. He drove across town, arrived at the facility, parked by the fence line. As he got out of the car, the wind carried a chill. The season was changing. He hurried inside the building, found his unit, turned the key in the lock. The metal door groaned open, revealing the small space. He flipped on the overhead light, rummaged through the duffel bag, and pulled out the wig and the soft gray dress. He changed quickly, placing his folded clothes in the corner. He didn't bother with the jacket unless he planned on stepping outside, which he never did. The stool he had brought sat in the middle of the unit, a silent companion to these hidden mornings. He sat down on it, letting the moment wash over him. It was as if time slowed in that cramped metal box, the hustle of the outside world muted. He clicked his phone on, reading a news article about a local festival. He felt the gentle brush of the wig against his neck. Even though it wasn't the same comfort he found in his own living room, it was still a kind of relief. He lost track of time for a bit, eventually glancing at his phone's clock to make sure he wouldn't be late returning. He decided he had around 10 minutes left. Then he heard footsteps in the corridor, faint but echoing. He tensed, waiting for them to pass. Usually, other renters came and went without pausing at his unit. But the footsteps slowed, paused near his door, then resumed with a shuffle. Sam froze, heart pounding, not daring to move a muscle. The footsteps retreated, but he couldn't relax. Slowly, he stood up, quickly peeled off the dress, folded it, and shoved it with the wig into the duffel bag. He pulled on his jeans and t-shirt and jammed his feet into his shoes, adrenaline spiking in his bloodstream. He muttered, "Enough for today," to no one in particular. This was too tense. He decided to leave immediately. Making sure the wig was carefully zipped away, he grabbed the duffel bag. He switched off the light, rolled the door shut, and locked it. The corridor was empty. He walked briskly to the exit. Outside, the wind whipped across the lot, scattering a few leaves. He got into his car and stared at the steering wheel for a moment, letting the tension subside. Then, turning the key in the ignition, he drove home, the quiet hum of the engine filling the car. By the time Sam stepped through his front door, he realized he was sweating despite the cooler weather. He called out, "I'm back," in a voice that sounded more casual than he felt. Carol answered from the living room, where Baxter lay dozing on the rug. "How was the errand?" she asked. "Fine," he replied, setting down a small bag he'd filled with a few random hardware items just to maintain the cover story. "Picked up some nails and a new wrench." "Oh, good," Carol said, stretching her legs. "I was about to start making lunch. Want a sandwich?" "Sure," Sam said, forcing a half smile. "I'm starving." He moved to the kitchen, quietly washing his hands, listening to Carol chat about a friend she'd run into at the park. At moments like this, He felt the contrast between his internal storm of feelings and the seemingly ordinary life they shared. He breathed deeply, reminding himself that he had found a balance of sorts, a method to keep living the life he and Carol had built while still holding on to what brought him quiet relief. The tension might never vanish, but he had grown accustomed to carrying it around like an invisible weight. The afternoon passed uneventfully, and the evening found them curled on the couch, watching a cooking show. Carol laughed whenever a contestant made a clumsy mistake. Sam joined in the laughter, though his mind drifted elsewhere. He often recalled the easier times when the dress and wig were tucked safely away in the spare room, and he could enjoy his Sunday hour in the familiar warmth of his own living space. Yet he also recognized that if he hadn't relocated them, the secret might have been discovered in that clutter-clearing spree. He had to admit that, uncomfortable as it was to visit a cramped locker, it had helped preserve his privacy. As Carol leaned her head on his shoulder, content with the rhythmic pace of their life, Sam felt a mix of love and an unspoken longing. He gently rested his hand on hers, giving it a small squeeze. She looked up at him and smiled. "You good?" she asked softly. Sam nodded. "Yeah," he said, voice steady. "I'm good." They turned back to the program, the flickering screen reflecting off their relaxed faces. And so another weekend ended, with Sam slipping seamlessly back into his everyday role, ready to chat about the weather and tomorrow's dinner plans. Deep inside, he knew his Sunday ritual would continue in one form or another. If the chance presented itself, he would find that small window of time to pull on the dress, run a brush through the wig, and just be Susan for an hour. And when that hour ended, he would tuck everything away in the duffel bag, secure the lock on the storage unit, and return to the life that everyone else recognized as Sam's. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always peaceful. But for now, it was the balance he could manage, a hidden piece of his world, a breath of quiet solace in an otherwise bustling life. And as Carol closed her eyes, resting against his shoulder, he silently promised himself that no matter how complicated it became, he would find a way to protect that small, vital ritual of peace.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.